Chapter 31. Daniel. The walk back to the guest suite was quiet. Not the cold silence of strangers, nor the brittle silence after a fight. No, this was the thick waiting quiet of two people, pretending they didn't feel anything, just to see if the other would blink first. Daniel opened the screen door and gestured her in. Vivian entered like she was being announced. Her robes moved like water. Her posture hadn't shifted once since they left the dining room. If she was tired, she didn't show it. If she was rattled, she wouldn't let it surface. He closed the door behind them and leaned back against it. The lights in the suite were low and warm. Outside, a breeze whispered across the balcony, fluttering the curtains. "I think you have some explaining to do," he said, breaking the stillness. Vivian made a quiet sound, neither yes nor no, and moved toward the tea table, fingertips tracing the edge of the lacquered surface. Her shoulders were back, head high. "A queen in exile." Daniel gestured around them. "If this is your version of non-entanglement," he said dryly, "you might want to revisit the definition." Vivian glanced at him, unimpressed. "I fulfilled my obligation." "Is that what that was?" he asked. "Obligation?" She folded her arms. You knelt before my father." "I protected your name," Daniel said. "I made sure you weren't embarrassed in front of the entire empire. It was necessary. I've explained this." "And I bowed to your parents, presented gifts, smiled at your sisters, ate Margaret Jo's dumplings, and pretended not to notice Claire staring at me like she wanted to spit fire. I did what I needed to do." Daniel's smile twitched. "So you were trying to balance the scales, make us even." "No, I wasn't thinking about it like that." "You didn't have to come," he said, voice softening. "Yeah, you told me you wouldn't." Vivian's eyes flicked toward him. "You never actually asked. You just assumed I wouldn't. We both know that was a reasonable assumption." "Well, you changed the rules when you knelt to save Jun." Daniel shrugged. "Someone had to stop him from turning the ceremony into a disaster. If I hadn't stepped in, your father would have executed him, and your relationship wouldn't have survived the blow. And someone had to make sure your family and all the Path iconics watching like hawks didn't think I was a cold-hearted hag." Daniel tilted his head. "Are you saying you care what people think?" "I care about outcomes," she said quickly. "Same thing," he replied. "You're overthinking it. You're under-explaining it." She looked away, out toward the moonlit courtyard. Her profile caught the glow of the lantern, and for a moment, she looked like something painted in ink and glass. "You said you didn't want a husband," he said, his voice going low. "Didn't want closeness. That this was just a political arrangement." "Yes, I did," she said quietly. "And yet, tonight." He took a step closer, not threatening, not even intentional, just drawn. "You didn't just show up. You bowed. You brought gifts tailored to my siblings' personalities. You let my mother serve you with chopsticks. You made my brother stammer like a drunken sailor." Vivian's expression remained flat. "I was polite. I was proper." "You were brilliant," Daniel said. "You were bloody perfect. Beautiful. Serene. A God's damn vision." That wasn't politeness. That was full-on theater. She turned toward him. "So what, Ethan? You want me to apologize for being effective?" "No," he said. "I want to understand what the hell is happening." A pause. Long, weighted. She spoke first. "You threw everything off balance when you knelt. When you saved my friend, no one else would have done that. No one else would even consider doing that." Daniel shook his head. "It's not that big a deal. I stabilized the situation." "You lowered yourself." Daniel raised an eyebrow. He repeated, "Is that what you call it?" "To the outside world," she said. "Yes. And what do you call what you did tonight?" Vivian hesitated. Daniel waited. Finally, she said, "A response. An appropriate reaction to your action." "That's not how you respond to something you don't care about," he said, stepping in close now. Their eyes met. Quiet. Hot. Sharp. Vivian's voice dropped half a tone. "You're impossible," Daniel smiled faintly. "I'm practical. You think you're clever. Why are we citing facts we already know? You're aggravating. You're just upset you can't flash that gorgeous face of yours and have me back down." That stopped her, just for a second. Her lips parted like she'd been planning to say something else, and it slipped. Then she said, quieter now, "What do you want from me, Ethan?" "Nothing you don't want to give," he said. "I'm just trying to understand. Because nothing about your behavior tonight seems logical. And honestly, if we're going to be stuck in this, I'd rather we both stop pretending we're statues." "You think I'm pretending?" "I think the Ice Queen might be warmer than people think." She didn't answer that. Not because he was wrong, but because he wasn't. A silence stretched. And just as something might have cracked open, just as Daniel saw her shoulders shift, her gaze soften. A knock. Brother Ethan?" Ryan's voice muffled through the door. Vivian stepped back faster than she should have. Daniel exhaled and called out, "Come in." She retreated toward the shadows of the inner room. Not hiding, just withdrawing, rebuilding her walls. Ryan entered, scroll clutched in hand, eyes bouncing between them like a kid, walking into the middle of a storm that had just decided to behave. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know if now was a bad time." "It's fine, little brother. What's up?" Daniel took the scroll from Ryan's hands. "Why are you already working on compression arrays?" he asked, brow raised. "No, you just got the technique." Ryan hesitated, then squared his shoulders. "I've already learned it," Daniel blinked. Ryan continued, voice low but certain. "It's clean, but slow. I'm trying to trim the casting time. If you can't fire it faster than a standard spirit technique, what's the point?" Daniel stared at him. So did Vivian. Her eyes narrowed, not critically but curiously. That didn't surprise Daniel. Ryan had always been like this. Quiet, precise, annoyingly fast when it came to anything martial. His instinct for technique optimization was practically reflexive. Daniel unrolled the scroll. The glyphs shimmered faintly silver loops in a tight compression weave. Elegant at a glance, but flawed at the junctions. Beautiful, but broken. He was halfway through the first node when he realized Ryan wasn't even looking at it. He was staring at the floor, hands clenched, posture wound tight. Daniel looked up. "All right, this isn't about the scroll, is it?" Ryan opened his mouth, closed it, then blurted out, "It's about Lily." Vivian turned her head slightly. She didn't interrupt, but she was listening now. Daniel leaned back. "Go on." Ryan ran a hand through his hair. "She's amazing, not just pretty, brilliant, kind. Talks to me like I matter." "She's from a noble family?" Ryan nodded. "Tier 3, branch line. Technically slightly above us, but not politically aggressive. Old bloodline. Quiet rep. We met in the archive wing. She laughed at my notes." Daniel smiled. "And?" "We started talking, walking together. She lets me carry her satchel sometimes." He paused. "We held hands once." Vivian blinked slowly, caught between a smirk and a sigh. Daniel kept his tone light. "So what's the problem?" Ryan's face darkened. "Jinhai." The name had weight. "His dad's a senior arbiter in the Commerce Tribunal," Ryan said. "Untouchable. Jinhai acts like he owns the campus, especially Lily." Daniel's jaw tightened. "What kind of behavior?" Ryan's voice dropped. "He bullies her. Says things like, 'How graceful,' or 'You look better without that cloak.' But when no one's looking, he gets close. Too close. Last week I found him cornering her behind the garden wall." Vivian's fingers tensed in her lap. Daniel didn't move. "What happened?" "I hit him," Ryan said. "No magic. Though I should hit him with magic, the bastard. Just straight to the mouth. He dropped like a sack of grain." He paused. "I may have kicked him once or twice." Daniel grinned. Good. That's my little brother." Ryan blinked. "What, you're not mad?" "Of course not," Daniel repeated. "You did what you were supposed to. You don't put up with that shit ever." "Brother, how can you say that?" "I'm going to ruin everything," Ryan said, panic rising. Jinhai's threatening to file a report. His parents are involved. Lily's terrified. If this gets back to Mom and Dad..." Ryan looked down at his hands. "They've worked so hard to rebuild this house. I don't want to be the one who cracks it." Daniel gently rolled the scroll closed. "You didn't crack anything," he said. You protected someone. That's not shameful." "But your mistake," Daniel said, "was thinking the truth speaks for itself. If anything like this happens again, you come to me immediately, understand?" Ryan went still, then nodded. "Yes, brother." Daniel stood, moved around the table. "No, you did the right thing. Now we need to be smart. We'll talk to Lily. Prepare a witness statement. Get ahead of this before his family spins it." Ryan looked at him like he was seeing him for the first time. "You're not alone in this," Daniel said. "Not anymore," Ryan sagged. "Oh, thank you." Vivian stood and appeared to be messaging on her crystal. Daniel turned, expecting sarcasm. Instead, "You're good with him. But, dear husband, you don't need to do any of that. Don't forget who you're married to." Then her face changed. Not cold, not poised, just still, and angry. Really angry. "I want to make sure I understand," she said, addressing Ryan directly. "Did my brother-in-law just say a girl he cares about was assaulted?" Her voice was perfectly level. Terrifying. Ryan froze, but spoke slowly. "Yes." Vivian stepped forward. "And the boy who did it?" "Jinhai," Ryan whispered. "Son of Arbiter Wei." Vivian's eyes narrowed. Daniel had never seen her like this. She turned toward the archway. "May." The aide appeared instantly, already alert. Vivian didn't look away. "Tell May everything you know about them." Ryan blinked. "What?" Vivian crouched, just enough to meet his eyes. Not kneeling. "I need to know who they are," she said. so I can make sure they never mistake you or Lily for someone unprotected again. Ryan nodded. He spoke quickly names, alliances, influence threads. Vivian listened. Every word. Then she straightened. May, she said, voice like cut glass. I want everything. Their holdings, their allies, contracts, who they trade with, who they owe, what they've buried, now. May bowed and vanished. Yes, my lady. Vivian turned back to Ryan. If I hear, she said, that he approaches either of you again, if Lily is pressured, if your name is threatened, I will attend to it personally. No need to be afraid. Ryan opened his mouth. No words came. Vivian continued, giving him a slight smile. No one lays a hand on what's mine. She turned to Daniel. And that includes my little brother-in-law. Daniel didn't speak, but something in his chest shifted. Slow, strange, warm. She hadn't said it to win him. She'd said it because she meant it. And in that moment, he realized Vivian Lee wasn't just playing her role. She had just claimed it. Chapter 32, Ryan Joe. Ryan sat on the balcony just outside the guest suites, the wood still warm from the sun. A soft breeze stirred the wind chimes overhead, quiet and precise, like someone had tuned them with a fork instead of fingers. Moonlight filtered through the garden trees in silver threads. He leaned back against the post and exhaled slowly. Everything was still. Everything except his pulse. He kept replaying the scene in his head. Vivian Lee, coldest woman in the capital, daughter of House Lee, heir to a bloodline that could crack mountains, had stood up. Not just for Ethan, for him. He hadn't even meant to talk about Lily. He just wanted help with the scroll. That was it. A quiet conversation. A bit of advice. Something to ease the swirl of frustration he'd been carrying since the punch landed square across Jinhai's smug face. But when it came out, when the words slipped past his mouth and hit the air, everything had changed. Vivian had moved like a drawn blade. She didn't shout. She just moved. She'd summoned May, eyes sharp as frost, and ordered a full background report on the Wei family patriarch and holdings. She told him Jinhai would never get near him again. That Lily would be protected. And she meant it. He hadn't believed it. Not entirely. Not until now. The message crystal in his hand buzzed 3 short pulses. It glowed faintly with muted golden light, the signal weak but steady. The older interface clicked as it warmed. Mana threads humming softly. He still remembered the day he'd been gifted it, his 5th birthday. One of his father's cheaper practical tokens. Functional. Durable. Not like Ethan's sleek Imperial Tier crystal. Then again, Ryan wasn't married to the heir of a Tier 1 family. So small. Don't sweat the small things. Still, his crystal, though older, had never let him down. He tapped it once and pressed it to his ear. Lily's voice came through, soft, disbelieving, a little breathless. Ryan, what did you do? He blinked. The message kept playing. I mean, thank you. But also, what did you do? My grandfather just got a call. He was totally bewildered. He got a direct message from Jinhai's grandfather, the patriarch of the Wei. Ryan's stomach dropped. A what? Can you believe that? A direct call. He apologized for Jinhai's lack of discipline and offered to send a gift. I don't know what kind, but it involves spirit-grade rice wine and apology coins with formal seals. Ryan's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She kept going. They're pulling Jinhai out of school. A stunned silence. Not just suspended. Gone. Immediate leave? They said it's for reputation recalibration and spiritual realignment. Apparently, he's being shipped off to a remote regional campus. Ryan still didn't know what to say. He's being carted off by sunrise. He's not even allowed to say goodbye. Ryan stared at the crystal. The message wasn't done. Ryan, what happened? Did your family always have that much influence? You didn't do anything illegal, did you? Because I'm not worth all that. There was a pause. Then her voice softened. Whatever it was. Thank you. The message ended. Ryan just sat there. He looked down at the charm in his hand. The weight of it felt different now, heavier. Not because the news was bad, but because he'd never seen things move like this. Not for someone like him. He was a nobody. When people like Jinhai crossed lines, there were meetings, complaints, slow, grinding bureaucracy that eventually forgot you existed. This was different. This was decisive use of power that he could barely understand. Power had moved for him. Or rather, someone had made it move. Ryan sat at the edge of the low balcony rail, the night air cool against his skin, his fingers still curled around the old charm crystal. The faint glow had faded minutes ago, but the weight of Lily's voice lingered like a cord still vibrating through his chest. She'd thanked him. She cared. He should have been ecstatic, and he was But instead of thinking about Lily, he found himself staring at the soft-lit curtain of the guest suite behind him, and considering about Ethan. He was different now, less cold, more smiles, more present, like something had sharpened behind his eyes, like the quiet brother Ryan used to tiptoe around had suddenly decided to stop waiting for permission to speak. He still didn't take up space the way Caleb did, didn't charm, didn't push, didn't brag. But now when Ethan walked into a room, people noticed even without him trying. He spoke more now with a dry sort of humor, and everything he said landed. His words had weight. His posture had steel. And the calm, odd brother Ryan remembered from childhood, the one always lost in theories and strange constructs, now moved through the world like he'd started seeing it from above. It used to be Caleb who mattered. Caleb was loud, flashy, and charismatic. He walked into rooms like parties had been waiting for him. And more often than not, they had. He made people laugh. He made people nervous. He had presence. He was also pretty good with a sword, at least for their little part of the world. And yeah, Ryan had admired that. But Caleb was also selfish, arrogant, obsessed with being right, even when he was obviously wrong. If you weren't useful to Caleb, you were invisible. If you got in his way, you were a problem. Ethan had been the opposite. Quiet, awkward, distant sometimes, but brilliant in a way that didn't show itself at first. He would sit for hours at a table, sketching theory diagrams or scribbling strange manuscripts that looked like nothing, until they changed everything. Ryan remembered one night clearly. He must have been 9, maybe 10, when he'd snuck into Ethan's room after a storm had knocked out the estate's external wards. Ethan had been at his desk, half asleep and surrounded by notes and diagrams. Instead of sending Ryan away, he let him stay, handed him a snack, and kept working on what Ryan thought was some kind of magical math problem. It wasn't. It was a prototype for the medicine that would later save the Lee family matriarch's life. The same medicine that restored her cultivation foundation and reversed the degeneration in her spiritual core. Their parents hadn't even known Ethan was working on it. No one had. He didn't tell anyone. Not until it was done. And even then, he didn't brag, didn't market it, didn't monetize it. He just moved on, like it had been the obvious thing to do. Ryan had watched the world scramble around rumors. The most powerful family in the empire owed Ethan a life debt. It was never confirmed. The Lee family didn't speak. Ethan didn't speak. It didn't matter. Their entire political standing shifted. And Ethan? He just asked for more paper and a turtle. Why a turtle? Ryan still had no idea. Back then, he hadn't really understood the implications, just that there were more servants, more clout. The turtle mattered. Back then, he hadn't seen it for what it was. But now he did. That had been the turning point in Ethan's narrative. The moment he shifted from forgotten son to something else, something important. Ryan had always assumed Caleb was the one who made the family proud. Caleb was the one who acted. Ethan was just there. But now he wasn't so sure. Ryan looked up at the sky, the stars laced with moonlight and possibility. It was time to stop looking at Ethan like he was the quiet one in the corner. Maybe it was time to start seeing him for what he was. The storm that had been sitting still this whole time waiting. Ryan turned his head back toward the suite. Vivian Lee, his sister-in-law, which still felt surreal, was probably in there with Ethan. Maybe they were reading in silence. Maybe they were arguing in low, knife-sharp whispers like they did at dinner. Or maybe Ethan was in there inventing something no one had ever imagined. A spell, a medicine, a breakthrough in mana pattern theory that would shift cultivation itself for generations. He didn't know, but he knew this. The world he thought he lived in, the one where power meant intimidation, where bullies always won, where boys like him were supposed to swallow their anger, while girls like Lily cried behind garden walls. That world was gone, because someone had decided to fight with him, and that someone was his second brother, and his unbelievably terrifying, unbelievably beautiful wife.
Chapter 33, Vivian. The dining hall had changed. Not in shape, not in size, but in texture, in tension. The formal banners were gone. The projection sphere had dimmed. Even the servants moved differently, now quieter, faster, as if they were avoiding interrupting something fragile. Margaret Jo had insisted on hosting evening tea after dinner. For digestion, she'd said. And to keep good company from vanishing too fast. Vivian, to her own mild surprise, hadn't argued. Now she sat near the far end of the long table, shoulders relaxed for the first time in hours, her cup resting between her palms. The tea was a blend of plum leaf and snow fennel light, clear, slightly bitter. She liked it more than she should have. Across from her, Marissa Lynn was still here. Apparently, she was staying with the twins for a few days. Vivian wasn't sure whether that was true or just convenient. Either way, Marissa had clearly made herself comfortable, half-perched on the edge of her seat, wide-eyed, breathless and entirely too amused by everything Ethan said. Claire sat 2 seats down, quiet and unreadable. Caleb leaned back with his usual confident sprawl, sipping wine as though his family's fortune hadn't been built on propriety. And beside Vivian, Ethan, her husband, still too quiet, still too controlled. Still, hers? No, not really. But his presence had weight now. People were noticing it. She was noticing it. He spoke only when prompted, but every time he did, the room followed. Right now, he was listening to one of the twins recount an alchemical mishap involving too much iron root and an unstable condensation array. I told her not to use the silver basin, Ryan muttered, nudging Emily. She used the silver basin. Because you didn't label the other one. Emily fired back, mock offended. It looked clean. Ethan smiled faintly. Silver amplifies conductive matrices. It wouldn't have held. I know that now, Emily muttered. Marissa giggled. Caleb looked bored. Claire just smiled, as did their mother. Vivian sipped her tea, watching the dynamic unfold. She was used to being on the outside of family tables, an honored guest or a silent heir. A symbol, not a participant. But here the air was warmer. She didn't understand why that made her uncomfortable. It shouldn't matter. Then she heard it. Ethan's voice, low and precise. Your resonance curve is stabilizing, he said to Ryan. That's why your techniques are cleaner. The Joe bloodline has always had a higher resistance threshold. It adapts slowly, but once a channel's been reinforced, it rarely weakens. Vivian blinked. Bloodline? Always? She asked, setting down her cup. Ethan looked at her, calm and steady. Since we started keeping records. She tilted her head. What is your family's inheritance, exactly? That question paused the table. Not entirely, but the air shifted, like a breeze pulling back before the leaves fell. Ryan glanced at Ethan. Claire looked up, suddenly attentive. Caleb raised a brow. You've never heard? I've heard a dozen theories, Vivian replied. None of them consistent, none documented, and none particularly complete. Margaret shifted. We've never really defined it, to be honest. It's not like most bloodlines. We don't have a technique inheritance or an elemental trait. Just strength, Caleb offered. And durability, Ryan added more softly. Ethan leaned back in his chair, folding his hands loosely around his cup. It's not flashy, but it's foundational. Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly. Explain. Ethan gestured toward the open scrolls on the table. The Joe bloodline doesn't give us a flashy affinity or a signature technique. It gives us structure, internal stability. Our mana is unusually pure, almost no fragmentation, even under stress. Our meridians self-correct faster, and our resistance to corruption and mana poisoning is absurd. Vivian raised an eyebrow. Is that why you didn't break under Nathan's onslaught, despite sloshing your mana around like a drunken sailor? Ethan gave a dry smile. I was demonstrating resilience. You were bleeding on the floor. Wife? Ethan said slowly. Did you just crack a joke? Vivian flushed. Ever so slightly. I joke sometimes. Since when? She didn't answer. Instead, she tapped her fingertip against the rim of her cup. She picked back up the conversation. And you've tested this? Compared it to other families? No formal trials, Claire offered. We've had healers comment on it. A few instructors noticed Ethan could hold pressure longer than others, but that was never written down. Just family talk. Vivian frowned. So no one studied it. No one's tried to understand it. We've never needed to, Caleb said with a shrug. It works. That doesn't make it wise, she said coolly. Ethan's voice slipped beneath hers. Calm, not defensive. It's not that we avoided research. The results never told us anything new. The bloodline strengthens slowly. It doesn't present all at once. We don't get a spark of flame or a blade of light. We just don't break. Vivian went still for a moment, then murmured, You've inherited purity, not performance. Ethan nodded. Yes. That's incredibly rare. Which is why we've never been targeted for it, Emily added, now thoughtful. No one sees a weapon. They just see another house with good control. But compatibility. Vivian said. Must be extraordinary. Ethan's mouth curved faintly. I've suspected the same. Vivian stared at him. For the first time that evening, she forgot about Marissa, forgot about Caleb, forgot about posturing. She was simply curious. Why hasn't anyone studied this properly? Why hasn't anyone published it? Out loud, she asked, has anyone tested your family under pressure? Stress fractures? Sustained overdraw? Compression cycle limits? Caleb blinked. No? We get nosebleeds, Ryan offered. Vivian ignored them. She looked at Ethan and saw something shift in his eyes. What about mana exchange? Purification loops? If your bloodline is inherently stable, your body should be able to absorb foreign mana more cleanly than average. Oh, Ryan said. No one's ever. He means no. Ethan cut in gently. We've never qualitatively tested it. Vivian's eyes didn't move. That should be tested. Claire was watching her now, curiosity overtaking caution. You're taking this very seriously. I take any unclassified bloodline seriously, Vivian replied, but especially one that's been functioning at this level, unnoticed for generations. She turned back to Ethan. You said your records go back how far? 9 generations, he replied. Maybe 10. Some were oral, others burned in the Blackwood fires. No formal inheritance ceremonies? None that survived. Vivian's brow furrowed. But your strength increases over time? Ethan nodded, slowly, consistently. And your cultivation progress isn't hindered? On the contrary, it compounds. The longer we cultivate, the cleaner our base becomes. Vivian leaned forward slightly, intrigued despite herself. So you don't gain power through breakthrough spikes. You layer, like calluses. Exactly, Ethan said. Layered refinement. It's why most of us appear slow in early stages. But once we stabilize... Ryan cut in, suddenly. You can't knock us down. Caleb chuckled faintly. Or if you do, you'll wish you hadn't. Vivian's gaze didn't move from Ethan. And this is instinctive? No rituals. No awakenings. No branded seals, Ethan said. It just is. We're born with it. That's not a bloodline, Vivian said softly. That's an evolutionary trait. The table went quiet. She hadn't meant to sound dramatic, but it landed that way. Marissa, of all people, was the first to break the silence. Wait, like survival pressure? Vivian nodded slowly. Inherited resilience. A passive magic system shaped not by technique, but by necessity. Ryan blinked. That's kind of terrifying. It's kind of brilliant, Vivian said. Caleb arched a brow. So what? We're not some lost magical dynasty, we're just too stubborn to die? Vivian's lips quirked. Essentially. Ethan chuckled under his breath. Vivian turned to him again. You've thought about this. Of course. And? He folded his hands. I've had theories, but no one ever took them seriously. I do. That stopped him. Not dramatically, but it stopped him. Their eyes met. The table faded. I take you seriously, she repeated. Even if you don't. He didn't respond right away, but something in the air shifted. Just a fraction. The flicker of recognition of someone being seen. Margaret Jo, bless her timing, chose that moment to refill everyone's cups and break the tension with a warm, shall we discuss what this means for future generations? Claire snorted. You mean matchmaking? Observation partnerships. Margaret corrected with mock formality. Marissa perked up instantly. Wait, are you saying I could help test the Jo bloodline? No, came Vivian's voice, smooth, decisive. Everyone turned. Vivian didn't smile. We're still assessing compatibility. Marissa's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't argue. Instead, she leaned back with a faux innocent shrug. Well, I'm very compatible with research, depending on who is conducting it. Vivian looked at her for a long moment, then turned back to Ethan. Have you mapped your meridians lately? I recalibrated them last week. With external interference? No. Would you? Ethan's gaze didn't waver. If you're asking, sure. Vivian's pulse fluttered. She didn't show it, but something in her spine straightened. And suddenly, the warmth in the tea, the soft candlelight, the absurd conversation swirling around the table, it all faded, because for the first time in a very long time, she wasn't looking at a pawn. She was looking at a partner.